So good evening, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Today we will be discussing about bilateral diplomacy, and we are having a speaker from Pakistan, that he is the ambassador of Pakistan to Romania. So I would like to introduce Mr. Ambassador, and then we will move forward. Dr. Zafar Iqbal is the ambassador of Pakistan to Romania, and he assumed his responsibilities as the ambassador and concurrently accredited to the Republic of Moldova in July 2020. He is a graduate of King Edward Medical University, Lahore. He joined Foreign Service of Pakistan in 1999. At the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Islamabad, he has experience of working in different capacities in human resource, South Asia, policy planning, Europe, Middle East, and Americas division. Moreover, abroad, he has served in Tunisia, Germany, and Ukraine. Dr. Zafar is an alumnus of Civil Services Academy, Lahore, Foreign Service Academy, Islamabad, Al-Imam University, Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where he learned Arabic language, and Foreign Service Academy, Berlin, Germany, as well as National School of Public Policy, Lahore, Pakistan, and the last one is Klingendial Academy, The Hague, Netherlands. He has also delivered the lectures on the subject of regional, global, human resource management issues, as well as foreign policy of Pakistan at different universities and at the diplomatic academies of Tunisia, Germany, Ukraine, Romania, and Pakistan. I would like to warmly welcome the Honorable Ambassador of Pakistan to Romania, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Zafar Iqbal. Excellency, the floor is yours. Excellency, can you please open your mic, because we can't hear you.
Yes, thank you, Musawwar. Thank you very much, and congratulations on arranging this course. Today's discussion, of course, is about bilateral diplomacy, which is a vast subject. Actually, bilateral diplomacy is the diplomacy with the shape which started centuries ago. And most of the time, the diplomats, even today, about 80 to 90% of the time, they spend doing this form of diplomacy. So the importance of the subject cannot be overemphasized. But I think in 40 minutes, the whole things cannot be discussed. So most of the information about bilateral diplomacy can be found. Of course, our younger colleagues can find it anywhere. I would like to make it a short introduction, and then I would like my younger colleagues actually to ask questions and make it a two-way kind of discussion. They can ask anything which is in their mind, any information, anything which they want to know from my experience, because knowledge or information can be found these days. It can be accessed from multiple resources, but I think, as they say, the experiences matter. So as I happen to spend some 20 years in this field, that's why I would like them to make it a two-way process. I would also like to learn from them. Thank you, all the participants. Bilateral diplomacy, as I said, it started centuries ago, but it has now evolved over time, and it has become more and more complex these days. In the recent decades, the Vienna Convention on diplomatic relations actually codifies how the bilateral, regional, and global dialogues will be conducted, how the diplomats will be treated in each other's state. But now, these days, there are a lot of more and more actors which have entered the scene, which make it difficult for the diplomats and also puts more demands on them, make it imperative for them to respond quickly. It's not the old days of diplomacy when, traditionally it is considered that diplomats will be like whining and dining and having fun in capitals. I can tell you it's a challenging job, and sometimes it's more challenging than other jobs. So if you like challenges, this field is for yours. If you like going to different places, and you are not the kind of person who wants to settle at one place, then this field is for you. Otherwise, I think you will have to rethink your priorities. Uh, as I said, the bilateral diplomacy, most of the time we're doing this. It has a certain areas, you can say. One is political, for example, keeping the relationship between two countries in a good shape, and also in view of security. The country's importance is, of course, it is categorized according to some concentric circles. Some countries, for Pakistan, maybe the relationship is very, very important. It can be important in the positive way, or it can be important in a difficult way also. For example, if I take example of Pakistan, our relationship with China is very strategic and close and cooperative and friendly, and it is very, very important for us. But similarly, our relationship with India, which may not be as friendly as we like it, but again, this is a very, very important relation. And on the other side, relations with the strategic partners like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and big powers. So there are concentric circles of priority for any country while conducting its bilateral relations. Then there are some countries which are like on the outer periphery. You want to be friends, but there is not much of things going on between them, but still you want to have good relations. You maintain sometimes your embassies there, sometimes some other embassies will be looking after the issues. Then there is economic diplomacy, which has gained more and more importance in the context of bilateral diplomacy, covering trade, investment, technology transfers, bilateral and multilateral agreements related to economic activities, investment protection, and all. Then another area which in the recent decades has become more important is the public diplomacy, which includes promotion of your country's brand, soft image, also exchange of scholars and educational exchanges. Then with the globalization and with the movement of more and more people across countries, the consular type of responsibilities have also become very important these days. The diaspora has increased in most of the cases of developing countries. Especially, people have moved out and have settled in different countries due to economic reasons, or due to civil conflicts, or there are multiple reasons. So the embassies have to look after them also. And with the awareness and with the internet and with this all kind of, human rights awareness, the citizens' rights awareness, there are more and more demands on the embassies. And another challenge is that these people, they usually don't have an idea what the embassies do. Most of the time, diaspora only thinks that the embassy is here to look after them. They don't know that we do a lot of other activities, and looking after diaspora is one of our responsibility. It's not the main responsibility. But in any case, they don't listen to these kind of explanations, and they want to be heard and to be treated in a way which sometimes it's not possible due to resource constraints. Putting an embassy abroad, sending diplomats, sending staff, it's not a thing which is cheap for any country. You have to spend a lot of money, although most of this almost, I think, half of this comes back in the country because people make some savings and they bring back their savings back home um, to be utilized inside the country. But anyway, so these are the four main pillars of bilateral diplomacy, which usually we can think of. But as I said, there are multiple non-state actors that have entered the arena now. One is media, for example, which is quicker than diplomats in reporting things. So then diplomats most of the time, because of the lack of resources. For example, I'm sitting here now. Media people are all around in the country, and I have one of my colleague who is helping me. So we of course cannot cover the whole country what is going on there. So sometimes media picks up the news and then we are responding to it. Then new subjects have also come up, for example, which were not there in the past. For example, climate change, terrorism, disarmament, for example. So all these things have made the diplomacy more complex kind of thing. Today's diplomatic practices are actually a consequence of the globalization of diplomacy. And then there is this information and communication technology revolution and flow of information. Again, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in any country is in charge of conducting international affairs. But ministries of foreign affairs also in every country, in almost every country, they are finding it difficult to kind of lead the way, because as you see around yourself, there are competing actors even within the government. Sometime from the top to the bottom, everybody is interacting with the peoples and countries abroad. For example, the president or prime minister develop special friendships or special likings for countries, and they give statements which may not be liked by diplomats. We were seeing this when Trump was president of United States. So he would tweet something, and then the State Department will get into action to clear up the atmosphere. This is another challenge. And then there are ministries, for example, economic affairs ministries, commerce ministries. They also try to protect their turfs, and they don't want to give any space to ministries of foreign affairs in their respective countries. Then we have intelligence agencies in every country, which also think that they know more about security and international relations than the diplomats. So today's diplomat has to be on the top. He cannot be a relaxed person who is spending some, paid vacation or something all the time. And then another thing which has now recently come up is the so-called accountability. Like people back home would, they would demand that they want to know what the diplomats are doing. And sometimes it's difficult because diplomacy work is based on nuances. It's based on certain practices where you want to keep things quiet instead of announcing every one of your moves. I can give example. For example, if I am trying to cultivate someone or some department or some person, and I go and meet him or her, and then I put on a public report. I put it in media in Pakistan, in Romania, on Facebook, whatever. Now it's a public thing, and there are competitors, of course, in every capital. The diplomatic corps is, of course, it's a body which has friendships, but it also a kind of a competitor. Not in case of Romania, maybe, but for example, in Germany, every country would like that German investment comes to their country. more as compared to other countries. So if our ambassador is putting each and every one of his move on media and publicly back home, because they want to know what he is doing, but it is actually counterproductive. The moment the other competitor would know, maybe they approach the same person, say, "Oh, look, our country has more kind of lucrative atmosphere for investment. So why don't you come here? Why do you want to go to Pakistan?" So this is also something which is new, and it is a challenging thing. I think I would leave the rest of the time for discussion, and whatever questions my younger colleagues have, and I would ask them that this is the time they can ask anything they want, because when you are in the practical life, it's very difficult to ask questions, in the hierarchies. So this is the time you are in your younger years. Everybody would try to answer your questions, ask questions, any question. No question is actually a stupid question. Sometimes we think that should I ask this or not, that or not. The only stupid question, I think, is the one which is never asked. If you keep it in your mind. So throw it out, throw it at me, be rude or whatever, be frank, ask anything. From my experiences, the life of diplomats, how it is, or something like this, whatever they want to ask.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for your discussion and explaining all main pillars of bilateral diplomacy. So as I come to know that you discussed about bilateral diplomacy. So I mean, it is also important that in which country you are going to be designated. The type and nature of diplomacy will change, because it depends on the country. Because if you are going to be designated in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the diplomacy will be different than in Russia,
Yes.
United States. So it means that the diplomacy is changing. It is changing,
Yes.
From country to country. So,
and one thing I would like to add, sorry, Musawwir, I'm cutting you short.
Yes.
That before being a diplomat, or before being a government servant, or before being anything in life, I would ask my younger colleagues that they need to work on themselves and be a good human being. Because if you are a good human being, you will find many things easy for you. In not only in diplomacy, but in any sphere of life. And be genuine, and you will not face that much difficulties, even if you are working in an adversarial kind of country, for example. I have personal experiences which testify to that you can even kind of have a good working relation with your enemy countries. Because their ministries of foreign affairs and your ministries of foreign affairs share the same mandate, that you have to have good relations. You have to remind them, and they will understand this. And I have experienced this, that things get easier. And as a diplomat, our responsibility is to maintain peace. And that's why we have to be friendly. We have to be, of course, we keep the interests of our country always in mind. But as a human being, if you are genuine, if you are frank, if you are friendly, you will find it very easy to move around.
Excellency.
Yes, please.
Mr. Osvaldo wants to ask a question. He writes down in the chat box as well. So he wanted to ask a question.
I can see. Yes, I got it. Actually, the tools of diplomacy are the same, whether you study in South Africa or in any other country. Most of the diplomacy which is practiced today is a Western form of diplomacy. And at the cost of digressing, I can say that everything, almost everything today, not only diplomacy, but everything is more or less Western form of thing, like even in trade, in governance and the institutions and the universities, and everything is established more or less on Western European principles. So the diplomacy also has the same kind of tools which are being practiced today. So if you have studied anywhere, you can practice it across the globe. There is no, I think, country where there is some different kind of diplomacy is being practiced. Yes, cultures are different. Cultural nuances may be different. For example, if I am working in Berlin, there is transparency usually. Whatever the government is doing, they put up on the websites. You can find information easily. You ask question, they will answer. But then there are cultures like in some countries, Asia and Africa and Eastern Europe, Central Asia, where personal friendships matter. If you are a friend, they will tell you something, otherwise they will not tell you something. They will be afraid that because the culture is of hiding things from the public. So they get a kind of reflex ingrained in themselves that you ask, and they, because they are not sure whether this information has to be given or not, so they usually err on the safer side, and they say they will not give you any information, and it's very difficult to sometime respond to whatever is being asked from the headquarters. Otherwise, the principles of diplomacy and the practices of diplomacy, they are more or less same across the globe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I would like to ask, or you can say discuss one thing, that I mean, when it comes to challenges, that in which country, for example, we are having good relations with Romania, but if we are having conflict with Israel, we are having conflict with India and with some other countries as well. So it is, a big challenge for those diplomats who are working in, those countries. So we can say that, do you face these kind of challenges, in your countries as well? For example, you are invested in Romania. So most of the youth, Romanian people, they don't know about Pakistan. So do you face any kind of challenges, or what kind of behavior you receive from Romanian people?
I think Romania is not a difficult country to work in for diplomats, because they don't have any kind of stereotypes attached to countries. They don't have a kind of racial discrimination and all. And they have good, like wherever I go, I'm received in a very, very friendly atmosphere. And this is I think an easy thing for me. As far as other countries, for example, Israel having presence here, Israel of course has presence in most of the countries. We don't recognize it, but it has embassies. So sometime you, of course, you are at a National Day reception or something, you might end up, bump into Israeli diplomat or whatever. So normal courtesies are usually like in those situations, people say hello, hi, and move on, to some other table or something, because usually you don't want to be photographed with a country which you don't recognize. It can become a big issue back home, sometimes. As far as and I think diplomats are usually mature. Like I know Indian ambassador here. Sometime because we are part of the Asian group of ambassadors, so sometime there is get together. Our dean of Asian diplomats is Indonesian ambassador. So when he invites, sometime we get together and we chat about things, normal things. Not, of course, we don't fight over Kashmir at the dinner, of course. And with India, we have an interesting relationship, with India. It's a kind of, because North India controls the Indian polity. The South India is different, and the East also different. There's the North part, which actually shares the genetics with us also. So it's a kind of, when relationship with the Indians gets better, then we are like, there are no people who are closer to us than Indians. Sometimes it has happened in the history. But when things get difficult, then again, it's like, there is no big enemy. And I find a parallel in our, village politics also. When you have this kind of people in the village, that they are relatives, but they are enemies. So sometimes they are at peace and sometimes they are fighting and killing each other. So, but Kashmir is vital issue for us, and of course we cannot compromise on it, and hopefully India will soon recognize this fact and try to solve this issue, so that the South Asia, because it's the home to the biggest population which is living in poverty, just because India is being intransigent in solving the issues with the neighbors. But I think abroad, these are not big issues. In some countries, for example, where there's big diaspora, sometimes they make a demonstration in front of Indian embassy, and then Indians sometimes make a demonstration, in front of Pakistan. But usually in most countries, we keep doing our work and they keep doing usually their work. Usually we don't cross paths.
Excellency, we have another question from Miss Yusra Naheem, and she wanted to ask that most of the world leaders are contacting Prime Minister Imran Khan regarding Pakistan's stance about Afghanistan and Taliban. So it is a still concern for the whole world. So as an ambassador of Romania, Pakistan to Romania, what do you see that it will affect the bilateral relations between Romania and Pakistan? I mean, what will be the effect of this Taliban regime on Pakistan-Romania relations?
Yes, because Romania is part of NATO, so some Romanian soldiers were actually working in as part of ISAF also, but they had brought them all well in time, brought them back. And some Romanians were there in their private capacity, working for security companies, working for other NGOs and all. They are also being evacuated. And Romania is a country which is easy for, I think, easy to work, because they don't go into big politics sometimes. Like they will not criticize Pakistan for any, small things. So it's not that big an issue here. Of course, we have helped them in evacuation, and they are happy about it. I remain in touch with their embassy in Islamabad. I think sometime they call me to get things moving in our system, and we try to give a push. For example, yesterday they needed a flight clearance and they wanted it quick. So I made some calls and requested friends, and it was done. So I think I have a very good relation with the government. Most of the time, it's so good that I don't usually meet them often. I focus on the economy and trade and culture and those things, because we don't have issues with between governments. We are very friendly from the beginning somehow, since Ceausescu's time. We have even at the UN, at the international forums, in peacekeeping operations here and there, Romanians and Pakistanis, they have good chemistry. So this problem, at least in Romania, is not there. But I have worked in Berlin, for example, because there it's a big issue. The Afghanistan, it's all the time big issue, or any human rights so-called violations is also a big issue. Sometimes you feel embarrassed, because the moment something happens, all the NGOs and all those people, the rights organization, they kind of, start questioning wherever they find you. So here it's not like this, even about Afghanistan, I keep meeting people, and usually hardly anyone talked about Afghanistan. Yeah.
Excellency, we have another question from Shariar. Shariar, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm Osvaldo from Angola, and there is a question in the chat. I would like Mister to have a look because I really would like to
Yes,
understand.
I'm having a look. It's I want to know how COVID.
My question, if I can ask the question directly to you.
Taliban situation. Yes, Shahryar, I saw your question. And yes, the diplomacy has been affected in a, you can say, negative way, because despite all the changes in technology, the diplomacy remains a kind of a field where personal presence and personal touch matters. It gives a different kind of atmosphere when you are trying to negotiate something. And I know that Shahryar is sitting in Angola and he's asking me for something. So it is very easy for me, for my mind, to go into the not giving mode. The negotiations are actually, you conduct negotiations in everyday situation. A child, when he's born, the moment he's born, he is negotiating. First, he is negotiating with his mother, then with the siblings, with the parents, with the relatives, with the kids at school. So negotiation is going on, and personal presence matters. If Shahryar is sitting in front of me, then it's a different ball game. Shahryar is asking for something, I must give something. It's not easy to kind of go into this not giving mode. So diplomacy has been affected badly. Yes, it has been affected badly, and we hope that soon this thing is over and people start interacting, because personal interaction matters. It matters in every form of human interaction, not only diplomacy. Every form of human interaction. Although people say that these days you can do video conference and all, no, it's not the same. You can imagine it's not the same.
Thank you.
So we are looking
Excellency.
forward.
Yes, Mr. Osvaldo would like to ask a question. Osvaldo from Angola.
Yes, there.
No,
I see another question.
I've already asked the
before
question. I've already asked.
I have a question from Leah Komba also. Leah is asking that, is there any way that the investors
Can I read the question?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. My name is Leah. I'm from Angola too. And my question is there any way that ambassadors around the world can help Afghanistan? That's my question. Did you get it?
Yes, I got it, and I read it also. Yeah, although the Afghanistan issue, I'm not directly kind of handling it, so I would not comment it, except that I can repeat my government's official position that we want in Afghanistan a broad-based consensus kind of arrangement where all the stakeholders are included in the governing setup. And we believe that this kind of situation will lead to peace. And if this is not done, then it will not be good for Afghanistan and its neighbors, most of all Pakistan. The ambassadors, what can they do? Diplomats, the world diplomats is also a body. when you are a diplomat, you are carrying an opinion, and whomsoever you meet, you transfer some of your opinion to that person. And if you have a good kind of thinking and thoughts, so you spread good thoughts, of course. And for example, you make friendships, you discuss things, and this can help in improving things and peace around the world. As such, ambassadors, of course, now the ambassadors, for example, I am here, Pakistan, the other ambassador there, we promote Pakistan's interests, of course, and that is what we are supposed to do. How can we help Afghanistan with this situation in Taliban? Now, there are debates because sometimes a culture is not ready for that big change which the other countries want to kind of impose on it. Of course, Afghan people, many of them, many of their relatives, they are living abroad. They are being exposed to modern culture. They are being exposed to liberal values. And the change happens. The change happens. It takes time, but change happens. Even some people say that the Taliban, which were controlling Afghanistan in late 90s, they are not the same Taliban which are the Taliban now. Now Taliban, they are using social media and all, and using Twitter, and I think the violence which was feared has not happened so far, and it's a good thing. And we hope that it continues like this, and soon they form a government which is broad-based and includes all the stakeholders. But of course, people are in panic because people usually panic because of their experiences or whatever they are hearing about it from different quarters, like things will get bad. If I tell you things will get bad, you will be worried. Or if you have seen that things were bad in the past, you will still be worried, and then those days may come back. I think it will take some time that people start feeling secure. And also Afghanistan has this peculiar situation for over 40 years now. 40 years means like two generations who have not seen anything but conflict. And this is an unfortunate thing. And also due to 4 decades of conflict, many of the people who could leave, they left the country. And many of those were professionals. Many of those were people who were required actually for a functioning society. The people left usually were either they were fighting or they were so poor they could not leave. So I think a middle class for any country is important. Middle class professionals, they actually run the society, the bureaucracy, the hospitals, the education. For all you need people, professionals. So this also is a difficult thing for Afghanistan, and we hope that Afghans who are living abroad, and when they feel that their country needs them, and hopefully it will be peaceful country, they contribute to the well-being of the society, because no other country wants a peaceful Afghanistan more than Pakistan, because for us it's a kind of question of survival. So let's hope things get better.
Thank you very much, Excellency. And I have seen your activities on social media, and you are focused more on trade cooperation, as you said, cultural cooperation, youth cooperation. So it's a great thing, and I appreciate your efforts in strengthening bilateral cooperation between Pakistan and Romania. And definitely we will continue this, further strengthening this cooperation. As far as Youth Diplomacy Forum is concerned, we want to conduct sessions or organize webinars about Pakistan and Romania bilateral friendship and cooperation as well. So if possible,
I think I have two more questions. I don't know whether we have time or not. We have two more
Excellency,
questions. Komal.
You can take only one question, Excellency, because any of them,
Okay.
if you want.
I think Afghanistan, we already discussed facing current ineffective implementation or so, but I think Komal has asked an interesting question. Fatima, I will answer maybe privately to you. Komal has asked whether we can say that conventional or unconventional diplomacy is the part of bilateral diplomacy. Yes, actually, diplomacy, despite all the perceived changes, it remains conventional. And the values attached to the representation and the privileges and immunities, those are important to conduct the diplomacy. And if you give importance to someone, then you are actually work for that thing. I can give example that if you give importance to your country's flag, then you will work for it. And it's a convention, and it's a tradition. You know, otherwise flag is a piece of cloth, but it symbolizes something. And that's why people even die for it. That's why we can, when people say that now unconventional diplomacy is taking more, but conventional diplomacy stays there. You cannot ignore the conventional forms of diplomacy. For Fatima asked about if you give me one minute, I can answer here.
Yes, Excellency, please.
Yes, she said, how can be diplomatic relations improved? I think we discussed this thing, Fatima, that for diplomacy, you have certain practices, and these are the tools, and foreign policy gives you, you can say, the ammunition, and you implement it with the help of diplomatic practices. The main challenges Pakistan facing in its foreign policy towards Afghanistan is actually in Afghanistan, the main spoiler is, you know, our eastern neighbor. Otherwise, all other stakeholders are more or less now agreed that they need peaceful Afghanistan. So let's see that India does not spoil things. Because for India, from Indian perspective, of course, they are adversary. They will do things to make things difficult for us. Otherwise, I think Afghanistan is now going to be peaceful. Thank you, Musawar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for joining us and for your fruitful discussion. You discussed so many things, and not just bilateral.
You can pass
diplomacy.
on all the participants can find me on Facebook. If they want to ask anything, they can send a message or whatever. I'm all the time available.
Yes, Excellency. I will share your details with them and your social accounts also. And thank you very much for your precious time. And thank you very much for all this fruitful discussion. And it was very informative, although you answered all those questions which are not related to bilateral diplomacy. Some were from about Afghanistan, and which is not bilateral diplomacy. So thank you very much for.
But anyway, all questions are welcome.
Thank you very much again. And we are ending up our session here. And thanks to all the participants, and especially to our speaker, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Zafar Iqbal, for joining us. And see you all. Thank you very much, sir. Good luck.
Thank you, all the participants, all the youngsters. Best of luck.